Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for being here. In case you didn't know, May is Foster Care Awareness Month, a federally recognized observance that draws attention to the hundreds of thousands of young people in foster care across the United States. It's a moment to listen, to learn, and to ask ourselves what it means to genuinely show up. Today, we are honored to partner with FosterClub, a national network led by and for young people with lived experience in foster care, for a conversation that has the potential to stay with you long after you leave this room. You may be wondering, why FosterClub and why now? As a company, Hanna Andersson has a long-standing philanthropic commitment to children and families. Our formal charity partner, Foster Love, is a cornerstone of that work, and you'll hear more about that partnership at the close of today's event. But advocacy for foster youth doesn't begin and end with one organization. FosterClub brings something uniquely powerful to this moment. Young adults who have lived this experience firsthand, who have been trained as advocates and educators, and who are here today not to be spoken about, but to speak for themselves. Their Lived Experience Leaders program prepares young people to share their stories, drive policy change, and help all of us better understand what it means to grow up without the kind of family support that many of us have never had to think twice about. Today's conversation is centered on the theme, understanding family privilege and showing up for young people in foster care. There are no right or wrong reactions today. There's just listening and the question of what we each choose to do with what we hear. It is my privilege to introduce today's moderator, Laura Goebel, the Director of Youth Services at FosterClub, and our panelists, 4 of FosterClub's Lived Experience Leaders. With that.
Thank you, Kayla. Well, greetings to everybody in this room, and I understand there's some folks with us online, and FosterClub is a national network, so we also have our team all across the country, just like you, we're a distributed team, and we have a network of about 500 lived experience leaders who are from every state. That collaborate with us to do things like this, to talk with folks about foster care experience, to experience for others that are in care or recently transitioned out. We often talk about the 500,000 young people that are currently in foster care today or recently transitioned out. That is a crazy number, right? And we know that Hanna Andersson, your phrase that you often invoke is champions of childhood. Now that is a tender topic for the young people that are here and those 500,000 young people that I just named. Because thinking and invoking childhood brings up trauma and brings up tenderness. And you all have a brand that is about softness. So we want to invite you into a soft conversation today, where these young people are going to just talk a little bit from their wisdom. We often talk about experience in foster care as expertise. So these are educators, and they teach me so much every day. And we are happy to co-create this space with you and with the folks online and talk a little bit more about foster care. And we want to start today. I also want to just name that you'll see we're wearing yellow. We have something in common with you. Our brand is fun. And yellow is a fun color, and that's why FosterClub's color is yellow. It's not my favorite color to wear, honestly, but it makes me feel bright, and we hope that we have a bright time with you here today, too. So my name is Laura Goebel. I am the Director of Youth Services for FosterClub. I'm based here in Portland. Our organization is based out of Seaside, Oregon, actually, even though we are a national network. And these folks are folks that live in this metro area and said that they would come and spend time with us today. So I'm going to invite Abby to start. Would you introduce yourself?
Hi there, my name is Abby. My pronouns are they, them. I'm 23. I spent about 3 years in foster care. I'm currently attending Western Oregon University. I'm studying creative arts and social sciences, and I graduate after this summer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Renata. My pronouns are he, him. I'm 21. And I entered foster care in 2021 and about 16 and had been in it until very recently at 21 due to extended care. And I am currently working to get more into youth advocacy work and stuff like this.
Hello, hello. So my name is Marcellus Presswood. I use he, it pronouns. I have about 3 years of experience in the Indiana foster care system. I graduated from college in 2025 with a fashion and art degree. Thank you much. And since then, I have been working on being a full-time creative, however that happens to look for me.
Hi all, I am Diamond. I'm 26. I use she, her pronouns. I'm currently studying family and human services at PCC, and I'm also a peer navigator with FosterClub. And I spent 10 years in Oregon's foster care system.
Diamond will also say this later, but Diamond is also a mother of 2 children that love Hanna Andersson. So while we were preparing to talk with you today, we actually did an intro session with Kayla, and she did basically the new employee orientation with us, and we learned some things. And one of the things we learned is one of the icebreaker questions that you often ask is, what did you want to be when you grew up? So our panelists are going to start and tell you what they wanted to be when they were young and when they grew up.
I wanted to be a few different things as I, grew up. But the main 2 things were teaching, mainly like English, like being an English teacher. I've always been a writer, and maybe like being a vet. But I definitely went like the working with youth route because I've worked with youth before, and that's what I want to do.
When I was younger, I really wanted to be everything, and I actually still do. But when I was younger, one of the biggest things I wanted to be more than anything was probably important. But now I feel like I am.
So I would say a lot of my childhood I spent just kind of doodling on everything. Got in trouble a lot for that. I've always wanted to be an artist. One thing that I'm very proud to say is that I have been able to really lean into that. I do believe that with the way that the world is right now, I think everyone deserves to really pursue whatever they're feeling. And one thing that was really healing for me was be able to be like, what did I want to do when I was younger and how can I get there?
I wanted to be 2 things. I really wanted to be a fashion designer and also a silly one. I used to watch Law and Order with my grandma growing up, SVU to be specific, and I really wanted to be a detective like Olivia Benson.
Okay, so a little glimpse into even some childhood differences. And I think we really wanted to talk a little bit about family privilege. This is a term that we use at Foster Club to talk about what is different for young people who are system involved than those who grew up in a typical family system, and what may be benefits that they don't have because they don't have access to family privilege in the same way. So our panelists are going to start and just talk a little bit about examples of things young people might take for granted that are actually forms of family privilege and how that came up for you. What examples do you have?
For me, it wasn't even anything too crazy. It was basic things. For example, I'm a parent and I just enrolled my kids into swim lessons because I think it's so important. But things like that, basic things, sports, going to the school dances, just basic core memory things, and a little bit more into detail, family gatherings and meals together. Yeah.
So for me, I actually was in kinship care, and it was a sort of thing where I think there's always this narrative of even like being to be around family is something that's very important. I think for me, something that is very taken for granted is this idea to even rely on people who are around you. That was something where even before care, I am an older sibling, And it is something where I just learned to really do everything for myself. And that was something the older I got as well, that I realized that there are people that are able to have someone to fall back on.
Yeah, I will go off of what Diamond said. Just like the simple family, like traditions that a lot of like, I guess, American families have, eating dinner together, going shopping together. I mean, even before foster care, I grew up on welfare with just a single mom, and we didn't have like the typical, American family traditions and values. So there was a lack of that, and in foster care, it was even more so. I did have some placements that had that more traditional thing, and you don't have to be traditional, obviously, but I did feel othered and like an outcast when, I knew in like media, even with like friends and like even family friends, when they were having those experiences, I didn't.
Definitely that absence, right? A big thing for me actually is even just humanization, right? You grow up in the system, and for a lot of us, even before we entered it, you don't get to be a person. Um, and that's something that a lot of kids don't have to experience. You have to be an adult, you have to be an older sibling, and for me, that means a human shield. And you don't get to sit and watch Christmas movies or do any of those things. And when you're an adult and you still don't have anyone because you don't know how to trust authority, you don't put up a Christmas tree. You just sit down and hope that the 25th is just another day. And that maybe one day you will feel like a person, because it definitely wasn't for your entire life, unfortunately.
Thanks. These are tender things to say out loud. So sports, meals, someone to rely on, trying to maybe avoid some holidays and gatherings because it was painful. Those are really powerful examples, y'all. What is one thing you wish people knew about growing up without consistent family support? From your wisdom of what you have lived, what do you wish people knew?
Um, I mean, just kind of what we said, our childhood, every child has a different experience, right? But it's very niche when it comes to foster care or kinship care, anything like that. I think most foster youth, if not all, feel othered in a way. And I think just like understanding that aspect and fully trying to comprehend it is like the best thing that a friend of a foster youth can do, a parent of a friend of a foster youth can do.
When we were prepping, Abby, you talked about school was a sanctuary for you.
Yes, sorry, I forgot about that.
No, that's true, yeah.
A statement that I made when we were prepping for this panel, school was a sanctuary for me, whereas for other kids my age, throughout all of K through 12, school was not their sanctuary. They hated school, they hated homework, they hated having to go into class. But when my home life was so just awful or just disorganized in a way, school was a set of routine. It was a set of knowing that I would see my friends there, trusted teachers there, trusted staff. And at home, you never know what would happen as soon as you walk through those doors. So school was amazing for me. It still is. That's why I went to college, and why I might even continue college as a graduate after I graduate, go into a graduate program. School has always been really important to me, and it's not like that for a lot of other youth, especially nowadays.
I really resonate with that. I mean, I love school, and I knew I could eat there. I mean, I knew I guaranteed meal would be there. And I also think about, to answer Laura's question, how a child is developing, because I did a lot of child development in my early college studies, and now being a parent, just how you're growing and things like that. And then when you're in foster care, trauma alters that. And so there are just so many things that go into it. But I feel like that would be my biggest difference, was it's not your typical childhood. Yeah.
Sorry. uh, the lack of stability, the lack of anything, it has a huge effect on you, right? Even with school, even something so simple as that, right? I go to school because I know I can go to the food pantry because my parents can't or won't. You know, I end up in a placement, but I know it's going to end. I end up in a place and I know it's going to end. I end up in a friendship. I end up in anything, any moment of happiness, it's going to end. And when you grow up in systems like these and you develop in systems like these, it is not simply that you become accustomed to all good things and all possibilities ending so shortly. It is that that is the only reality that you know. And you look around you and a lot of people that are like unhoused, a lot of people in these really bad situations, they have these histories in the care. They do not have support, and then their children end up in care. And it is a cycle. And without support, it only continues.
I think for me, something that's very important that I want everyone to realize is that there is no ideal way for placements to go. I think that a lot of the time, I do a lot of work in terms of advocacy. And there is always this narrative that like reunification can be this beautiful thing, or that, there's this ideal home. The fact of the matter is that regardless of what's going on, that youth is going to experience extreme trauma. And whether that's emotional, physical, any of that. And I think a lot of that is the only way to really understand that is to really talk about individual experiences. I know for me, in the context of school and things for that, like that, home was not a safe space. School was not a safe space for me either. So even that is like this difficult idea of like, I didn't have a sanctuary place. But I think that that bred this sort of ability to make sure that I'm able to take care of myself because there were no other safe spaces for me.
Thanks, Mars. Yeah, I think I saw a lot of head nodding, that experience of having to be an adult or do adult things as a child, for sure. And I also remember when we were talking and prepping for this conversation, some of you all talked about identity formation and how your identity formation did not happen in typical ways because of that, right? That your identity was in being adultified often, or in having to find safe space. And so normal identity formation, like somebody in human services would know or a parent would know, happens very differently when you have a disrupted childhood. So even answering this question of what did you want to be, important. Yeah, loved. Diamond joked a little bit earlier when we said, what did you want to be when you grow up? Loved. Important. Yeah, so it's a little bit different than this really sweet video that we saw earlier where when folks said, I want to be a bug, or I want to be, monkey. I want to feel safe. Yeah, thank you. I think I'm actually going to skip the next one because it's repetitive to some of the things that we talked about, y'all. But I do want to hop to milestone question. So how did you navigate milestones like school transitions, healthcare decisions, or early adulthood without traditional family support? How did you do that?
I didn't. I basically had to figure out everything myself. I grew up the same way. Even before entering foster care, I was the oldest, so I was the caretaker in the home when my parents were unavailable, which is majority of the time. And so I basically just navigated literally everything by myself. Like it doesn't get more than that. Yeah.
You'll see a theme here with the older siblings, for sure. I was very much the same way. Even when I graduated college, my celebration was, I I think I took a picture and I put it online and that was all I got. I think it's this kind of idea that if nobody's teaching you, you just kind of have to propel yourself in and hope it goes well. Which I will say, I think that can be a strength in terms of learning and being able to roll with the punches. But it definitely is more difficult when it comes to milestones, because it's like, people get to celebrate this. I was expected to do this, so it doesn't feel special to me. Yeah, I think that's kind of the way that I operated as well. It's just this idea of you either figure it out or you don't.
I was very fortunate to have a lot of like DHS and court appointed help. There's this lovely program called ILP, Independent Living Program. They're under DHS, but they serve foster youth ages 14 to 24, I believe, at least in the state of Oregon. They teach them financial literacy. They teach them basic life skills. There's group events and even summer camps, weekend away things every so often, and it's free to join. There's some qualifications, but most foster youth can join if you joined foster care after a certain age. But my DHS workers, caseworkers, and especially my ILP workers have helped me a lot. And not every ILP worker is that helpful, unfortunately, but I've had the privilege to have a very good support system with that. And I think it's really important to fund and just be knowledgeable about programs like this. Because when your parental units are not supporting you, the only other choices are teachers at school or court appointed people. And I was very privileged and still am privileged to be a part of the ILP program. I've worked for them and got paid for them before for a summer camp thing. And my ILP worker currently, she helped me apply to college. She helped me apply for my first apartment. So court appointed DHS, ILP situations like that have been super helpful for me.
For me, for a long time, there was no navigating, right? Not really. There's only throwing something at the wall and seeing what sticks, or sinking, or swimming, right? And you throw yourself in the water and see if you drown. Before DHS, it was very much like I myself navigating at one point getting food and clothing for myself and my brother, and having to manage that as a 14-year-old grown adult and even younger. And at least then I had some control, a choice. Then when you enter care, sometimes you lose that. And you didn't think you could lose any more autonomy, but you do. And a part of that dehumanization that's been mentioned, sometimes if there's the ability to, you get put into a facility after facility, and you have no choice in navigating your healthcare and navigating what is right for you, what you eat, what you develop as your own self, your sense of self. So there was at least a time of possible navigation, but for some of us who enter care, there's not even an inkling of a choice. At least in my adulthood, I was very fortunate, like my lovely peer here, to come into a wonderful support like ILP. Shout out ILP. And I'm not going to rehash a bunch of the same stuff, but I will say that I did, for the first time, get to have not only a choice in my ability to navigate healthcare and ability to navigate every system, every milestone, many that I had, perhaps like graduation, not smiled once for. For once, not only was I allowed to navigate it, but I was taught how. And like Abby said, that is why things like this are incredibly important. Because you either don't know how to navigate or you don't get a choice. But there are sometimes moments where neither of those have to be the option.
Y'all are pointing out some really important things. I love Foster Love, which is an organization y'all support consistently because they provide a lot of tangible support to young people in care. So things like luggage or bags. So transitions happen a lot in foster care, and that really practical thing helps humanize that experience rather than throw it in a plastic bag. And also, Foster Club focuses more on community and connection and peer support spaces, belonging, and advocacy and policy work. And so we really complement each other. And I think about the way, like our online community, if somebody says, I got a job or I had a birthday, the love that goes out from peers to each other in our app community is really powerful. So having like tangible ways that your milestones are acknowledged through some of these supports we've named, and then having also people that will celebrate you. You already named a couple of supports, so court-appointed special advocates, CASA is one of the programs, and ILP. What other people, organizations, and moments did someone step in and provide support that made a difference? I think we're gonna shout out another organization y'all support. Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, so Project Lemonade, as some of you may have known, I've seen some of your pajamas in their store. I started off at Project Lemonade as a shopper when I was in foster care, and I grew into my role. They opened an internship for youth in foster care to work in the store, so it was like my first job, and it was just so rewarding that they saw us, and it wasn't like your typical job. I mean, it was because it's retail, and we were doing all the retail stuff like tagging and merchandising, things like that, inventory. But it was a chance to connect with peers like us and make money, and the money was ours. It wasn't managed by anyone else. It was directly to us. And Project Lemonade and all the work that they do is just so amazing about how much they care and what they do to provide clothes, and their Make-A-Wish program and their scholarship program for those kids to go to school. It's just, yeah, I love them.
Other than ILP and CASA and DHS and Foster Club and all of those organizations that are very lovely, I actually was an intern at Western Oregon University's Fostering Success. They're a very small organization, and the supervisor, Emily Pleck, just brought it back last year, and I was a paid intern there, and I had not met any other foster youth at Western until I did that internship, and now the people that I worked with and met through Fostering Success are literally like my best friends, and they were some of my first friends in college, and just having that type of organization or even just like a club at school was amazing. You don't really hear about foster youth centered places on college campuses or even like in K through 12 settings. So having something even as small as it is was amazing. But yeah, other than that, definitely ILP, DHS, CASA, etc. But that personal experience that I had was amazing too.
Shout out Project Lemonade. Shout out Project Lemonade. Everything that Diamond said about like just the amount of work they do. I mean, for example, I became 18 not knowing how to do anything or even socialize. And I was never allowed a job. And this was not just a gateway into, resources, into clothing that makes you feel like, wow, I'm a person who gets to have something actually nice. It's giving you opportunities even after. It's giving like this paramount space. And after even my initial internship, I came out of it so much different, able to socialize, able to navigate so many things and develop skills without this overwhelming fear. But furthermore, my connection with Project Lemonade didn't end after my internship, right? I am very lucky that because of PL, know Diamond, and that I continue to get the opportunity to work with them and be reminded that there are people who are proud of me. Another resource, though, because we have mentioned Project Lemonade, shout out Project Lemonade, Project 48, actually. And they are having their annual Impact Night, May 17th, by the way. But it was mentioned the thing with trash bags, right? You know, your stuff just gets thrown in a bag. Well, what Project 48 does, and among many things like offering skills training and a food pantry and job like access to just networking for job opportunities. Within the first 48 hours, a youth enters care. They send a bag of a lot of like items that are just essential to showing that you're a basic human being with the things that you need.
Yeah, so fun fact, I'm actually brand new here to Oregon. I just moved from the state of Indiana. I will say, I know we talked a little bit about Foster Club, but I do owe a lot of my experiences to them. The whole reason why I ended up moving here was actually I got an internship with them, and that was the first time I ever talked at all about my experience in foster care. And since then, I've been able to do a lot of things with them. I'm actually an advocate for National Foster Care Month. So that's something that I'm working on right now. But I do know back in my home state, there was a really, really small program in my school, Ball State, called Guardian Scholars. And the people that were in charge of that, her name is Bria, she was a phenomenal resource for me. She helped me get through some of the hardest times, even when I wasn't super honest about all that I was going through. But I will say, and being new here, I am extremely excited to be able to make new connections and kind of figure out those different things as well. So, yes.
Mars, did you say Bria? Okay, so Bria, as an individual, you're the first person to talk about an individual that made a difference. Can you say a little bit more about how Bria made a difference to you? Like, what did Bria do right?
Absolutely. This was kind of a hard time where I was in this social transition of my life where I started to really unpack the things that were going on for me. I think as rolling into old questions, this being an older adult or an older sibling, I just kind of kept myself constantly busy. So I never really had to unpack anything at all that was going on with me. Because I'd be like, I'm busy doing this, I'm busy doing this. And Bria really took the time to sit down with me and be like, hey, I recognize that these are resources that you've never had or maybe you've even thought to ask for. Like, I want you to know that I'm here for you. She really helped me in terms of getting supplies that I needed. She was like, you know, I have this whole room that's open to you. If you need stuff for laundry, we have that. If you need snacks, we have that. And I remember she was the first like person where I really like broke down about everything that I've experienced. And I remember just being like, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't mean that. And she's like, it's okay. Like, that's normal. You're allowed to unpack these things. And I just went on the rest of my day. And I remember a few months down the line, I was really unpacking that, and I was like, that was the first time ever anyone has ever given me that space and made me not feel shameful for feeling upset.
Thanks. Yeah. So as a kid, wanting that safe space, and Bria is one of those people that provided safe and soft space, it sounds like, for you. Yeah. All right. So we all know that when people understand there's a problem in foster care, 500,000 is a big number. A lot of people understand that there's more kids waiting for a safe foster home than there are foster homes available. A lot of kids have institutionalized experiences because there's not families. So a lot of people hear these things and they're like, I want to help. I want to do something. But not all help is good help. Sometimes that helpfulness actually hurts or is not as helpful. So we want to hear your wisdom, panel. When are times that support was offered but didn't feel so helpful? And then what would have made the difference for you?
Yeah, for me, I was a young parent. I was 17, turning 18, and I was still in foster care. I chose to do extended foster care, use all my resources while I can. And there were no homes available. So I had to stay in a hotel, and then homes available for a pregnant teen as well. So that was an added thing. And so there was a program available for young moms, and I was like, okay, I'll try it. When I got there, it's basically a lockdown facility. Most of the people there were there for some type of hardship, either trigger warning like drugs and alcohol, or mental health, or custody issues with their children. I was fortunate enough to not experience those categories. So for me, it was just very unhelpful and very hard being there. I had no choice on anything and lost all of my ability to basically be my own person as an adult turning 18. So yeah, it was very hard.
Yeah, so the story of you were a pregnant teen, you needed a safe place and a supportive place. The only available place, well, first you were hoteled for a while, and then you went into a facility that was really a program that was really for people that were struggling with mental health addiction. So you're like, that ain't me, but this is what's available, right? Yeah, thank you, Diamond. Yeah.
I see with my peers in foster care who are part of ILP or DHS, CASA, etc., resources from their workers will be shared with them, but they won't be told what these resources are for or how to navigate them. The workers won't work with them one-on-one to get through that resource. Like, for example, they'll be like, oh, apply to this college. Will you teach me how? Will you do it with me? And a lot of the times I see that not happening. There are times when there's like a summer camp, for example, or like a weekend away for ILP. And I'll see these other youth that are most of the time younger than me that will complain about their workers to me. And I'm like, oh my God, like I am so privileged to have a really good ILP worker. So there's just a lot of communication issues with just workers in general. And I think that's from a lack of funding, a lack of employment in general, a lack of support for these types of programs. But to sum it up, just sharing resources or sharing information, but not fully fledging it out with the youth. Because it's important to understand fully what you're doing with these resources and information.
Abby, thanks for bringing that up. So Foster Club has an online store, and we have a lot of resources available for young people. One is Foster Cub. It's a coloring book in English and Spanish for young people. And it's so easy to just give a coloring book to a kid. But it's really about the foster care experience. It's like, what is foster care for a young child? They might need a little support processing that thing, right? Yeah, so just handing a coloring book without like talking a little bit in an age appropriate way. We have things like Foster Care 411, which is like for young people when they first come into foster care, usually middle school, maybe high school age. So it's a little bit higher level developmentally, but just handing somebody a book, again, without any sort of conversation or dialogue or question. We have an FYI binder, which is this really cool throwback to analog, where young people who change places all the time, who might have a cell phone and keep numbers in it digitally, like their caseworker's number or their attorney's number, but then their phone gets taken away, and then who knows what happened to that phone, or their service changes or whatever. So having a binder where they can keep all of their information, write it down, there's folders and pockets, but just handing it to a young person without like helping them process what it's for and how to take care of it. So that's a really good point, Abby. And we love resources. We also love people that actually help young people connect with those resources.
Definitely.
Diamond had mentioned an incident with like a residential situation. I have seen that many, many times just in my own experience. I know that these programs mean well, and when I have had good caseworkers, singular, that did genuinely care. They were not fully aware of the way that a lot of these facilities in the troubled teen industries are run that can very much re-traumatize you and can very much push you into further dysregulation, right? I think back to when I had entered a sort of half facility, half housing program in when I was 17 down in Southern Oregon, right? And my caseworker genuinely meant well, and I understand the program themselves meant well too. Despite that, there were so many incidences that were genuine threats to my safety and my mental health and all of these things, even so far as to the structure of which consequence was dealt out, the way that issues were handled. And you try to talk to the adults, but at the end of the day, the biggest problem is that they're steamrolling you. They're not listening. And the biggest reason, I think, at least in my experience, where I had ended up in these situations where genuinely the people meant well, was because they thought that I didn't mean well for myself. And they thought that what I had to say was not correct. And 10, 100, 1,000, more times than you can count, a lot of us youth end up still in bad situations because the people that do mean well for us don't listen.
You're pointing out something really powerful, Renata, around power. And you all have given examples of being silenced and your choices being taken away. And that's one of the major impacts of system involvement, is that you have fewer choices than a typical child or childhood. You have, and your power is diminished. Like we often, so I think our brand as Foster Club is empowerment. I think Hannah's brand is empowerment, is about life and light and having children know themselves and express themselves and feel good in the world. And oftentimes the system is trying to control and with good hearts, but especially in a trauma-informed system, choice and power and voice is really powerful and important. Thanks for naming that. Okay, you know, we've talked about champions of childhood, and we want to hear your wisdom. What are small but meaningful ways employees or allies for young people in foster care can be champions of childhood? What are your insights about that?
I think social media and the internet and keeping up with the news about foster care, foster youth, changes in the system, changes in the government related to foster care, just trying your best to keep at least a little bit updated is great. Following like social media accounts for Foster Club, Foster Love, Project Lemonade, for example. There's a place in Salem called Salem Angels, actually, that work with foster youth. You can give them a follow. Just like simple acts like that, and just keeping up to date, even if it's just like a quick story view or sharing a post to your story or to your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. Just spreading the word is really important to me personally, because I get a lot of my news from social media, which some people might see as like not entirely, I guess, what's the word, appropriate or like accurate. But it's the way of the world now, and I've learned so much about the world and history through that, and you can do the same with foster care, foster youth, etc. So yeah, social media, the internet in general, just keeping up to date as best you can. If you see a news article about something in the government relating to foster care, read it or read some of it, just skim it. Just, you know, keeping foster youth, the foster care system in your mind as you're working with children, as you guys do, is honestly like one of the best things you can do, even outside of work.
When I think of non-monetary things, I think donating. We spoke a little bit about trash bags. In my experience, that's all I used to move with. And reflecting back when I was moving as an adult, I was like putting my stuff in trash bags, and I was like, wait, I don't have to do this. Like, so don't, like, before like you donate to Goodwill, like think about dropping your luggage off maybe at a DHS office or a nonprofit, so at least they can have a backpack or something rather than a trash bag, because I feel like, I don't know, I don't want to speak for everybody, but we already feel like trash. Not to, be a sentimental, but yeah. And then I think like of things like when kids want to do sports and think like your old soccer cleats or your skiing gear, little things like that that you may not think about on a normal daily, you just want to get rid of. Like, I just think about that a little bit.
Thanks for bringing that up, because what you're talking about is human dignity, right? And having, experiencing high quality, like seeing Hanna Andersson close at Project Lemonade's free store. This is a high quality product that when we were prepping, we talked about hand-me-downs and the place of hand-me-downs and families that are struggling. Hannah's clothes hand-me-down, right? And that's really powerful. It's one of those things that helps that softness, that quality, knowing what's behind that is a way to experience human dignity. Yeah, thank you. Other insights?
Sure. Okay. Yes. So this is something that I'm very, very big on, especially as I delve more into advocacy. I always try to think this of problem and solution sort of thing. And I've kind of come up with this mantra that visibility without protection is just endangerment. So you can always offer up spaces for the youth and be like, what do you need? But that true, honest help is going to come from being hands-on. There is absolutely a difference between, like giving that space, but allowing that space. If someone's experiencing those things, how are you actually going to help them get through it? And I think that's just kind of something that I'm leaning into as well. And it's going to look different for everybody, as we've already talked about. But it is this idea of the difference between visibility and actual help.
One thing that I think is also important to acknowledge, and a lot of this can relate back to what Abby mentioned here, is like, yes, learning specifically, like paying attention to laws and stuff, but don't stop at laws around foster youth. Learn about all of the marginalization, poverty, and how like poverty, trauma, and 100,000 things, how laws that are causing harm to our Black and brown neighbors, our trans and queer neighbors, all of those who are around us, right? That experience marginalization. You put them in an even you take this concentration of even more marginalized youth that are, if it affects any of these groups, right, it's going to affect foster youth even more because they are so vulnerable. We are so vulnerable. And so many of us disappear. So many of us, we don't know where the other goes, right? And we end up in poverty, we end up houseless, we end up in all of these situations, in abuse, doing sex work. Understanding all of these systems and at least learning about it and learning how these things connect can very well help you understand both how to help the large scale of marginalized and just vulnerable populations, but also especially know the dangers, the turmoils, all of these things that affect foster youth. It's important.
You're getting a little clap out there. Yes, thank you, Renata. Yeah. These intersecting systems of the justice system, the mental health system, the healthcare system, the education system, all of these systems do intertwine. And as you said, young people in foster care are disproportionately marginalized people. And you did a really eloquent job naming that. Thank you. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, just going back to that, the intersectionality of it all. I mean, just looking at us, we all dress different. We all have different gender identities, I mean, sexual identities, et cetera. Just learning about intersectionality and how that affects us. And then one more thing about like social media. I know there's a few people on like TikTok or Instagram that are foster parents and share their experiences. There are some that can be a little bit exploitative, so I would watch out for those. But I know there are some really good ones that showcase, not like with the youth, but they showcase how they do it and they do it well. That's a reason why they have like a good following. I would just try to seek those out in a way. But yeah, everything that everyone said was amazing.
Thanks for naming that. Yeah, we partner with Laura Foster Parenting, and she, I think a strong foster parent has been named over and over by young people of like a huge intervention, a difference it makes between really struggling for a long time and having a trajectory change for a young person in foster care is a foster parent that is trauma informed and that meets a young person where they're at and helps them find their way. Yeah, for sure. Thank you for naming that.
Thanks.
Okay, we are on the home stretch here, you guys. Thank you so much for being in this conversation with us. I'm gonna invite you to put your feet on the floor. You at home, if you are on the camera with us, feet on the floor. Take a deep, maybe the deepest breath you've taken today, in through your nose and out through your mouth. You ready? I'm going to invite you to just scan the conversation we've had together. Maybe find a tidbit that's still sitting with you, an insight, a story, something that's sitting in your feelings or your body or your mind. Maybe offer a gratitude for that insight and tuck it somewhere you can keep it close and keep looking at and processing. And take one more deep breath. All right, panelists, let's wrap it up with what's one thing you want everyone here to take away and remember from our conversation today?
Empathy and sympathy is key. And like we just said, intersectionality and understanding it is key when it comes to foster youth. And just putting yourself in the youth's shoes.
Absolutely. And I think doing things like this, like we all have lived experience. So hearing directly from us, I know there are a lot of organizations who are doing great and, you know, supporting us, but hearing directly from us, hearing our stories, I think is just much more impactful and meaningful. It also gives us a chance to share our stories and not have it be shared for us, like we have multiple times throughout our experience. So I just think it's so important. Yeah.
Yeah, so I definitely agree. I think for me as well, this kind of idea of I spend my time using my voice to uplift voices that are more important than my own. And I think that's one way that like we can really help each other out is like, it doesn't have to be transactional, but the more that you kind of give those spaces and like really offer up your empathy and your gratitude and like understanding that intersectionality, the more able we're have like people that feel comfortable enough to do this kind of thing. Panels are very nerve-wracking, you know, being able to get up here and really talk about your experiences. In fact, the matter is like having people looking back at you that are actually really listening and wanting to give you that space is very meaningful. So thank you to all you guys.
My last thing, and this topic came up a lot, humanization. Don't let the statistics disconnect you from the fact that we are real. Before we are a rape statistic, a statistic of youth who have experienced homelessness, a statistic of youth who do or don't finish college. Before we are any of those numbers, we are just us and we walk past you every day. Don't let the numbers distract you from the fact that we're real. And thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Aren't these young people incredible? I know.
One more time, y'all. Thank you so much to our panelists, to Laura on behalf of Foster Club staff for facilitating today, and for all of you for showing up with open hearts and open minds. What we heard today is a reminder that showing up matters. And I want to take a moment to celebrate the ways that Hanna Andersson has been showing up, because this work didn't just start today. This month marks the anniversary of our official partnership with Foster Love. Can you hit the next arrow on the keyboard there so we can get my slide? If not, it's cool. I don't know where Desmond left my clicker. We got a slide though. We'll see if Annie can figure it out. This month marks our anniversary with Foster Love, an organization working to ensure that every child in the foster care system has the essentials they need to feel safe, valued, and loved. And our partnership with Foster Love has grown into something we are genuinely proud of. More than $75,000 in direct donations, more than $1 million in product donations, and more than 100 hours of volunteer hours donated across multiple hands-on events. And we're not done yet. This month, just today, actually, the email came through, Foster Love will launch First Night Kits, providing essentials for children. Hanna has provided over 4,000 baby sleepers to this effort to make sure our youngest demographic has something soft and warm to comfort them. These actions aren't just line items. They're a reflection of our purpose, proof that when a company decides to stand for something, it compounds over time. If today sparked something in you, if you heard a story that shifted your perspective or left you thinking about how you might show up differently, we encourage you to carry that forward. Talk to someone, share what you learned, look into Foster Love's work and Foster Club's mission, because champions of child aren't born, they decide to be. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you to Foster Club for being here.
Yeah, take a pin, take a pin.